welcome, welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. This is Take the Lead, Change the Game, a podcast for women leaders looking to deepen their knowledge and skills and find enjoyment in the process. We're powered by Safra Leadership. Safra Leadership is a cohort-based coaching experience designed to fuel courage and ignite impact among women professionals. I'm Lindsay Goldford-Gray, and this is Mindy Glady, and we're the co-founders of Safra. Together, we bring a blend of leadership, coaching, strategy, and lived experience to help women navigate challenges, seize opportunities, and lead with confidence. So today we are going to continue our three-part series on goal setting, and we are in part 2. Last week we talked about visioning and sort of the importance of if you don't know where you want to be in 10 years, it's difficult to set goals for 2026. So, hi, Mindy.
Hi. Happy to be here with everyone.
Today, we're going to be discussing SMART goals. So this is really how to set those goals. Now that you have the vision, hopefully, how do you set goals for the year ahead? Yep. So, Mindy, how do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so I think this method, and some people may have heard it, some people may not have, SMART, and it's an acronym. And I think it's a good way to set pretty much any goal, personal, professional. But what it does is it makes sure that you are being very thoughtful in setting your goals, which I think is important. As Lindsay and I have talked about, when we coach people, when I work with leaders, people have a vague sense of where they want to go or kind of a goal, but they've never really broken it down. And so the SMART framework sort of forces you to break it down. I think it's really easy to create like a document where you go look at how you've broken it down, and it's just easy. It's very accessible. It's easy to remember. And so I'm excited to talk about it because I think one of the common mistakes we make when we set goals is saying like, oh, I want this promotion, or I want to make this amount of money, or I want to travel to this place. But it's sort of like almost like a pie in the sky. We don't know how we're going to get there, but there's a lot of steps that get you there. And the sooner you can identify them, the more quickly then you'll realize that bigger, broader goal. And what I think is interesting, Lindsay, is yesterday we had a breakfast, a leadership breakfast that we host once a month. And the person sitting next to me was chatting and said, I don't think I have ever had a goal in my career. I just kind of keep going with the flow, and I get a promotion or I get an opportunity, but is it what I really want?
Yeah.
And so this woman is moving up, but she's also like, is this what I want? And so I think SMART goals help you really parse through all of the clutter maybe in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another sort of trap that we're setting is setting goals that are very vague. So it's like, I want to bring in more business, or I want to grow my business, or I want to, gain more visibility. And that's a great sort of like overarching vision. But then what does that mean in practice? Mm-hmm. And so one of the wonderful things is it makes you do that. So we haven't shared any slides yet on the podcast. I'm going to try to share one now so we can start going through the SMART goal framework. Let's see. Nope, that's not going to work. I want to share my screen. No, this is not working. Well, this is
okay. Y'all are going to have to take some notes. Yes. And we can put a picture of this on social media and for your benefit. But you can find lots of these visuals for SMART goals. So yeah, let's talk about the SMART goals, what the framework is. So for those who like to take notes, SMART stands for the S is specific, M is measurable, A, achievable, R, relevant, and T, time bound. So Lindsay, let's kind of go through them and give people an idea of like why each one is meaningful, why it matters. And maybe we can talk about how we use them in our work together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was able to do it. I think that it's showing up now.
Oh, it is. Congratulations. We did it.
I was like, things I should have tested and didn't. Okay, awesome. I think we are there. So when we're talking about what SMART goals are, as Mindy said, the first part of a SMART goal is that it is specific. So it's not something like, I want to grow my business, right? It's like I want to increase my clients by 10% by the end of 2026, for example.
Mhm.
And I think, again, one of the biggest things a trap we fall into is that we're very vague or general, which can be a great starting place. But then we really have to think about specific. Mindy, let's talk about measurable.
Yeah, measurable. So, the what I like about measurable is it forces you to define what success looks like for your goal. And like, just say I want to grow my business. Um, it's very hard to measure that, because you will always be searching for more if you haven't defined it. So once you define that specific, measurable is really how do you track your progress? And for every goal, there's going to be a different measurement. Sometimes it's over the course of 1 year. Sometimes it's over the course of 1 month or even the week. And so the way that I use SMART goals is, some of my SMART goals are literally like week by week. Some of them are quarterly, yearly. I don't go much beyond a year. Like I have the vision for farther out.
Yeah.
But the measurable is really setting those targets of what do I want to get accomplished in this, what do I want to get accomplished and how am I going to be able to track that? Like, what do I need to see? The one thing I'll tell you is don't think that this is all about just getting clients or making more money or getting a promotion, because sometimes people will say, like, I just want to feel more happy or more to my work. So let's use the example of, I want to feel more connected to my work. And that's your specific goal. Measurable would be, well, what does that going to feel like to you?
Yeah.
So measurement doesn't have to just be a piece of data, a number. It can be a feeling. It can be, I'm sleeping better at night. And that shows me that. So I want to always say that, because I think sometimes we get too tied to, there has to be some very tangible number behind a goal. And it can also be how you feel. And that could be the measurement that you use.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like how much free time or how many kids' soccer games you made it to. It needs to be measurable, but measurable does not have to be a number. I know, Mindy, sometimes you and I get sort of maybe in a habit of talking about financial goals because we work with a lot of entrepreneurs trying to grow their business or people who are trying to develop business that work in a corporation or a firm. But it can be anything. I mean, Mindy, you talked last week about your meditation practice that has nothing to do, obviously, with finances. And so, yeah, definitely. Achievable. So the goal has to be achievable. So for example, I think, Mindy, you and I gave a presentation last week to the Austin Young Lawyers Association. And the example was used of like, oh, I want to make $1 million a year. That is achievable for many people. It is probably not achievable in year one, or it's very unlikely. It is like some people do it, but it's unlikely. So then when you think about setting achievable goals, is you might want to say in year 5 or in year 3 or whatever, I have X financial goal. Okay, well, what does Q1 of 2026 look like if I'm going from 0? Am I signing my first client? Is that the goal for Q1 of 2026? Is my 2026 goal to sign 3 clients or 5 clients or 10 or 100? And so really making sure that what you set out is achievable and you can tweak along the way. But of course, like a big part of the momentum of success is motivation, and motivation, part of what helps us stay motivated is being able to achieve our goals.
Yeah. And let me give a little tip on achievable. So you should set your goal. You should, and it should, like the slide says, be challenging, but possible. Also run this by a couple people. So, because sometimes you will undersell yourself.
Yes.
Or you will oversell what you should, or you'll think, oh, I should be already at the $1 million, or I should already get that promotion. So I would say once you do the specific and measurable, go and ask a couple people, like, what do you think? Because I will say, like, I had a meeting with someone yesterday and he really pushed me. And he said, you actually need to be, increasing your fees. You need to be increasing your presence. And I think you could do X, Y, and Z. And that is actually achievable. But I think it felt a little like, wow, that's a stretch.
Yeah.
But it's actually achievable. And so always run this past a trusted advisor that you have, because they will push you to maybe go a little farther, or they'll say, yeah, that's really unrealistic what you're trying to achieve. So
yeah.
Yes. Do you want me to talk about relevant? Yeah. So relevant is interesting. And I think this is a little bit, you have to be a little bit more aware. And this is like a reflection. So after you've set, the first three and you kind of you have your understanding of specific, measurable, achievable, then you want to make sure that your goal aligns with your values and your purpose. And the way that I look at is like, let's use the example of getting a promotion. So let's say, you want to get promoted to this next job you've identified it, and your measurement is you're going to do X, Y, and Z to get considered for that promotion in Q1 and Q2, and then you're going to go after it in Q3, it's all achievable. You do want to review that in terms of the bigger picture of your values, your purpose, where you're heading, because if you're just running at a promotion because you think that's what you're supposed to do, which is actually what this woman at our breakfast talked about, is then it may not actually align with what your overall life plan is. And I think some of us can really get, I don't know what it is, we can get stuck or we can get seduced by the corporate ladder. And those of us who are overachievers or achievers can feel like we have to get to this next thing. But is that relevant to your vision for your broader career, relevant to the vision of your broader life? So you do want to check yourself on that. Because if if you have written out your vision and your goals for your career, for your family, for your, whatever it may be, always go back and look at it. I mean, this is what companies do when they do strategic planning for a company, like a financial strategy. They have to go back and say, does this align with our mission and vision of our company? Because sometimes you can start chasing crazy ideas because they sound good and you could probably achieve them, but they're not aligned. And businesses do this actually quite a lot. And sometimes it ends up being some pretty catastrophic failures, especially if they go outside what the purpose of their company is, and they chase the new shiny object. So that's what relevant means.
Yeah. In nonprofits, there's a term called mission creep. And it's basically, I think the question here for the personal side is like, is whatever the goal is mission creep on who you are and what you want? And I think this is where the visioning, as you mentioned a few times, Mindy, is so important. And I think the biggest trap we fall into here is that we have not even done the visioning work.
Yeah.
Because I think most often you and I hear what we heard yesterday, which is, well, when asked the question, well, does the promotion align with what you want? The answer is simply, I don't know. Like it's not no, because if it's no, then it makes the work easier. Right. But the answer, I think, and I don't think that's uncommon. We hear that quite a lot.
Yeah.
Time-based. So this is another one that people often say, I want to grow my business, or I want to, just as an example, but then don't set time-based goals. So I know, Mindy, you and I like to do a lot of quarterly goals. And so, in Q1 of 2026, which is January, February, March, we have certain goals. People have annual goals. Some people have weekly goals, and you can get really, really narrow, which is helpful when you wake up on a random Wednesday and you're like, I have 2 hours of time where I don't have meetings. What do I do? It certainly can help you. And they need to be time-based, because also that makes them measurable, where if you hit a target, if you have a deadline.
Yeah. And the time is going to be different for all different types of goals. But you should have it, and you should write it down somewhere. You should document this. Don't just do this in your mind, like put it on your calendar, and hold yourself accountable to that. It doesn't mean that you can't extend the time if that time comes and you have not achieved it. But a lot of this is really just on you. And I think that's what builds your character as a professional. It builds your, I think it just builds your competency, is where you can really hold yourself accountable to the timing of all of this.
Yeah.
Given that obviously some things are going to change, but I think we both work with people and advise people who there is not the time frame, and who knows when things are going to happen. And like you said, I actually love that you said like the 2 hours on a random Wednesday.
Yeah.
I have a list always going of my goals, and not just little tasks, but like goals. So it's, if I do have that 2 hours and a meeting gets canceled, I'm not just spinning my wheels. And maybe I actually just go take a 2-hour walk because that's the best thing for me, but that's going to the bigger vision. Or it could be, working on one aspect of the goal. Lindsay, do you want to walk through like how we do this in our work at Safra, and kind of give it a real life example?
Yeah, actually, what I was just thinking of in terms of goals is one thing I hear about often, and that you and I talk about often, is social media posting. So like, this is an example that oftentimes people will say, oh, I want to post on social media more. I want to increase my social media presence. Well, again, if you just say that's what I want to do and you don't have time-based goals, that's really hard, where it's like, I want to do a podcast once a week, right? Mm-hmm. That is a SMART goal that you and I set. And we want, we set time parameters and all those things. And we now have been consistent. Now we've taken weeks off for like Thanksgiving, but we've been consistent for 3 or 4 months now, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
Another goal, that you and I have talked about surrounds our cohorts. And our goal was to launch our first cohort in the fall 25, which we did, which has been very exciting and fun. Mindy, do you want to talk about sort of our goals for 2026 and the cohorts?
Yeah. So after we set that very specific goal and we held ourselves accountable to it, and we really went through the SMART framework, we're using it for our 2026 goals, which is, we have the first cohort launched, and now we want to launch 2 cohorts in Q1. And so what we've been doing, and it was very specific, and we wanted 2 specific cohorts. We started to kind of track how we're going to get there. This is definitely achievable. We didn't say we want 25 cohorts. Again, that would be fantastic. And that's where we're heading down the future, but not now. And it goes to our goal of growing Safra. And we have held ourselves accountable. And so we do check-ins and say, okay, are we recruiting the folks who are going to want to join our cohorts? And we've been doing that kind of at the last part of this year because we know our deadline. We know when we want to kick these 2 cohorts off. And what's been great about that is it is in the back of our mind of, this is our goal. It's very specific. How many people do we need in each cohort? And we have applications now. And so we have a plan, and we've been executing on that. And again, I Lindsay and I have the bigger vision of, we hope to have, 20 to 30 cohorts going in a year, but not now. And I think that that's what's really important about the achievable part of this is that you do have to be patient. It doesn't mean that you put off your goals, but you do have to be patient. So anyhow, we've been really executing on it, and I think it's been very successful. And it's allowed us, the other thing I think is important is when we're out there talking to people, whether it's at our Safra breakfast or just with people on the phone, we can say, hey, we have 2 cohorts launching in Q1. We've always known that was going to happen. Yeah.
And we can do that in October because we've already planned
it in October. And so that's why goals are important, is because sometimes you need people to help you achieve your goal. If you don't know what your goal is, you don't know what you're working towards, you can't. That's what networking is about. You need to go in with a plan. And so don't just think about it as your individual goal that you're only responsible for, because actually when Lindsay and I have that out and about, we say, oh, we have these cohorts launching in Q1. And we're about to start saying we have cohorts launching in Q2. Yeah. And so then we'll start saying that. And so that's why it's really important to have this SMART framework so that you can also talk about it more clearly.
Yes, 100%. And the ability to back it up and figure out how long of a runway you need is also incredibly important. I mean, another thing we did today, Mindy, was talk about like our CLE goals. And so part of our goals are to give continuing legal education to lawyers once a quarter. And we had planned for Q4 of 2025 and Q1 of 2026, like in October. And those were set. And now today we talked about what do we want to do for Q2 and Q3 of 2026. Mm-hmm. And it's December of 2025, but sometimes it takes that long, the chips to fall, so that we can plan and be certain or really confident that we're going to achieve our goals.
And the one thing I want to say for those of you working inside a firm or inside of a company, if your goal is, to get on a different account or to build your client base or to get a promotion, it's the same thing. You need to know what it is because you need to tell people.
Yes.
One thing I do want to mention just lastly is I've worked with a couple companies where there are people within that company who have this idea of, I want this role. I want to go for the COO, or I want to be considered for the CEO, or I want to be considered for a senior financial analyst. But they haven't went through this framework. It's just like this idea in their head. But once and I'll use an example of someone that I was coaching, and I told him he really wanted to be considered for a CEO. And I said, well, you need to name it.
Yeah.
You need to own it. You need to say to people in the company, that's what you're looking to do. But you can't just say it like pie in the sky, like, oh, that would be great. There has to be some smart goal toward that. And so these are helpful to you too, because if you get stuck in the elevator with someone from a senior leadership team, and they're like, hey, Mindy, thanks for all your hard work. Well, what are you hoping to do in the next couple of years? You better be ready to tell them what you want to do. And you better be ready to say, my goal is to become the CEO. And so I am doing X, Y, and Z. Do you have any recommendations for me? What do you see for me to do? You better be ready in that elevator to say that. And literally this stuff happens in the elevator. Totally. So be ready with your goals, because you never know who you're talking to who can get you to where you need to go.
Yes, 100%. And another person that comes to our breakfast and some other events that we've had, Mindy, has recently articulated a goal that she would like to speak at a very specific conference. Mm-hmm. And that's another great example of somebody is going to know somebody that can make a connection there. And she's 100% qualified and will totally smash it. So there's no issue with competence or anything like that. It's more about who does somebody know that can help get her on a list to speak at this conference. And so I think, Mindy, really over the last months, we've even watched this particular goal sort of evolve, get named. And now it was named again yesterday. And I think it's going to happen. For sure. Very confident. Sure. So anyway, all right. Well, I think what we'd like to encourage you all to do as we wrap up is to set one SMART goal for 2026. Use this framework. Please drop it in the chat on social. We'd love to hear about what it is and give you any quick tips that we have. And then next week for our last goal setting episode in this 3-part series, we're going to talk about overcoming barriers and accountability.
Awesome. It was great to be with you all today.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Take care and have a great rest of your day. Bye. Bye.